So today is an extremely special day. I am so excited to be here with Angela Stopper. Angela, like we were saying before we came on, go Bears. I'm so jealous that you are in UC Berkeley. Welcome to the Fearless Female Leader Show.
Thank you, Sheryl, for having me. It is such a pleasure to be with you. Go Bears, also go State. As a Penn State alum, we can root for both of those schools on our time.
Yeah, that's a lot of spirit. Yeah, my son graduated from Haas in 2020. So, and I
Awesome.
lived most of my life up there. So I'm very jealous of where you're sitting right now. So I'm super excited to have this conversation around halting churn.
Mhm.
But before we jump in, I would love to know a little about you and what inspired you to care so deeply about people and to really decide you're going to rise to the top of your career.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here and to share some insight, share some stories. My name's Angela Stopper. I'm the Chief Learning Officer at UC Berkeley. My PhD, as I mentioned, is from the Pennsylvania State University. I have a PhD in workforce education and development. And, recently, as we started talking, Cheryl, I've been thinking a lot about courage and about confidence. And in that reflection, it led me to remember a particular moment in a high school gym class that I would love to share as a little bit of background about maybe what spurs me forward if you would indulge me in that story.
Of
Um,
course, I love it.
so I background, I'm not a sportsy gal. I love watching sports. I do not participate very successfully in sports. I'm left-handed. There's a lot of reasons why. High school gym classes were really about survival for me. It was about survival, and I remember very distinctly, and I've been thinking about this a lot. It was like sophomore year, I think, and I went to a very rural, small high school in Pennsylvania, and sports were kind of a big deal, and volleyball particularly was a big deal amongst the female students. And so much so, our gym teacher was also the volleyball coach. And so if your listeners were like me, a little bit more bookish, maybe not super athletic, you probably remember those getting picked in gym class moments. They're horrific, right? So you're already awkward, you're in your teens, like you're super self-conscious, and then you get to sit there and watch everybody get picked around you instead of getting picked for the team because of your lack of talent.
Mhm.
And in this one particular gym class, I happened to be in class with like half of my class were actually volleyball players. And so we had our module on volleyball, and the instructor, the gym teacher, of course, picked the three-star volleyball players as the three team captains. And somehow one of my friends got picked as like the fourth captain. And so when we started picking teams, of course, the volleyball players, because their goal was not to survive gym class, their goal was to win the volleyball game in gym class. And so they started picking other volleyball players. And I'll never forget this non-volleyball player. She picked one of us first, and there were volleyball players still left to be picked, right? So,
Mhm.
and I don't remember if she picked me first or second, but it was very early in the picking. And so she built this team of us, of the others that were kind of just in gym class to survive.
Mhm.
And it was such a in the moment, it was interesting as I reflect on it now. 30, I mean, this is 30 years ago, and it still moves me when I think about what she did. And so like during the picking, I remember the gym teacher saying, like, "Are you sure these are the people you want on your team?" And she was like, "Yes, absolutely." And after the teams were formed, the gym teacher again was kind of like, "Are like this, you have a team of losers. Like, are you sure this is what you want to do?" And this like 15, 16-year-old woman, her name was Jessica Dieters, she said, "This is my team." And as I reflect on that, I think about Jessica a lot. And 30 years ago, I've not talked to her in 30 years. We've lost touch, college. I think about that, and I think about the courage it took. I think about the confidence she had. I think about just what she did in that moment for us. instead of othering us, instead of, putting us in a space where we were the loser team, she had a different goal. Her goal was to have fun, to build community, to make that gym class something that just wasn't survivable, but that was meaningful and powerful and connecting. And it's so interesting. I think about that a lot. I think about goals, and I think about these goals of winning, and I think about community building, and how sometimes they can not be moving you down the same path.
Mhm.
And I remember this courage shown by this 15-year-old girl. And I don't even know, like, I've never told her that this was so powerful to me, but like 30 years later, I think about that.
Mhm.
And I think about that every time I'm trying to make a decision or thinking about how I'm going to be showing up for my professional sphere. So if for some reason this lands in Jessica's ears, this
Mhm.
show, thank you, Jessica. You're amazing. You made an impact. But I just think that one experience was such a powerful moment of community and courage and strength. It is one of many, many, many moments that really put me on the path that I'm on today as a very successful, still non-sportsy gal,
Mhm.
trying to make a difference in the world.
Yeah, so I love that story so much, and also, I'll jump ahead, then we'll jump back. I think it's directly relates to this title of Halting Churn, because after you got picked, I bet you were not going to give up and you were just going to give your best, whatever that was. And so, a lot of times, at least the research says that churn happens because people feel like they don't matter.
Absolutely. You feel like you don't matter. You feel like you're not seen. You feel like you can't be your authentic self. You can't show up in ways that are meaningful for you as a human being.
Mhm. And so, now, I want to go back and ask you about the mindset, just because of, my coaching, my background in applied sports psychology and coaching. I'm so interested because there probably have been times, many times, when you've been the only, rising to not just the top of your career, but the top of your career. And my son would like me to say this, the number one public institution in the country. Um, and so, what has been the mindset that's allowed you to keep going? And did you ever have anything happen that maybe knocked you off your game a little bit?
So absolutely, it- let's I think courage is a mindset. I think courage is not a lack of fear or being unafraid. I think courage is really having the mindset to balance your brain's fight flight instincts with kind of logical analysis so that you can overcome fear and do what's right. And I think that mindset of courage, again, not in a lack of fear, but in a balancing the chemicals that are happening in your brain and being able to get to yourself to a place where you can analyze and decide and move forward. I think that mindset is unbelievably powerful. And there have absolutely been times when I have been running down this path, probably a little too quickly. I'm a first gen college graduate. I mentioned I have a PhD. I was going to be a faculty member. That was my goal. I was at Penn State in one of the top programs for organization development and consulting in the country at the time. And I had worked in business schools my entire career. I was going to be a faculty member in a business school. That was my dream. I was going to be a faculty member at the London Business School. So it was very specific.
Mhm.
And I had my first referee journal writing experience. And so for the academics and non-academics out there, for the non-academics, basically a referee journal is, you do a bunch of research, you pour your heart and soul into these projects for years, you write up an article, you submit it to a journal, it gets reviewed by a group of your peers, you get feedback that says yes or no. And my rejection letter was so harsh, it destroyed my soul. Like
I'm gonna pause. That must have been pretty bad.
it started with the sentence, I don't know what executive education is, but, And then it spent 4 pages telling me why my research was garbage and everything that I had in the article was nonsensical and did not matter.
Wow.
So I received this rejection letter and thought, this is wow. I'm clearly not cut out for academic research. Come to find out years later, these letters are written in that way, and what you're supposed to do with them is kind of weed through the ego that's in the rejection letter and find the bits of things that say improve this, change this, maybe update your references here, maybe gather some more literature review here. And you're kind of supposed to weed through it and find the nuggets and then fix whatever you've written and resubmit. And that's kind of the process.
That's like in between being in like fetal position because you've just gotten wrecked over these words. Yeah, I mean, who knew?
Right. Exactly. Again, first gen, right? First gen college student. I had no idea. And so, and it wasn't until I started working at Berkeley and started making these connections with our fantastically brilliant faculty that they were like, oh yeah, I've received rejection letters like that all the. But to me, to my like 30 whatever year old soul that had put my heart and soul and dreams, I was working full time and getting a PhD. I was real. I was like, oh my goodness. At the moment, it destroyed me. And I then got my mind out of that fight or flight. I was definitely in flight. Got my mind out of that, started thinking logically about, okay, what does this actually mean for me? And was interviewing with the London Business School for a faculty position, interviewing with a university called Vlaric for a faculty position, and interviewing at the University of California for a non-faculty position. And I took the non-faculty position because at the moment I decided, even if this isn't a career ender, this isn't the kind of community that I want to be in. I don't want to be in a community where my colleagues talk to each other like this. I don't want to be in a community where I have to fight this hard to make my voice heard or to be respected and maybe I just had thin skin. That's absolutely true as well. But I ended up at the University of California and I ended up working in administration instead of in a business school as the chief learning officer at UC Berkeley, and I've never been happier. I have amazing colleagues. The faculty, the staff, the students are the most brilliant people in the world. We change people's lives every day, and I could not be happier. I love living in Oakland, California. I love everything about my life right now. But in that moment, when I got that letter, I was, to your fetal position, I have just wasted tens of thousands of dollars that I didn't have. I have wasted years that I didn't have, and my dream is destroyed.
Yeah. So for anyone listening, by the way, I was born at Children's Hospital, just fun fact. Probably not too far. But for anyone listening, I want you to, gosh, really listen to the guts and the courage, because a lot of times we have in our mind what we're going to do. We are going to be on the faculty, we're going to be at the London School of Business, this is happening. And so I really want to commend you for listening to your gut and your heart and taking action, because that's not always easy to do.
Yeah, it was really hard. I had built an amazing support network around myself, which is an action step that every one of your listeners and viewers can think about. What does your professional network look like? Do you have supporters in that network? Are there people that have your back that will, I think Michelle Obama said it great once. She said, you need cheerleaders, but you also need people who are going to tell you when you have spinach in your teeth.
Yeah.
Do you have that network that when you fall, they will not stand and look at you or make fun of you or put their foot on your back? They will literally reach down a hand and help you up.
Yeah. And I just have a feeling that you might have a best friend, like I have a best friend that tells me what's up. And maybe you had a best friend that after you got that letter said, why would you want to subject yourself? Is there something else maybe that you might want to do?
Yes,
And so I
absolutely.
think having those friends that are brutally honest, that deeply care about us, are so important.
Yeah.
And so I think all of this, I really feel strongly that all of this is related to halting churn. We were
Mhm.
talking a little bit about, before we started recording, in that a lot of times that people leave because they don't feel cared for. Our biology of human beings, the number one biological need, as you probably well know more than anyone, is, safety.
Mhm.
And so, do we feel safe in our role? And then behind it is really, do we feel seen? Do
Mhm.
people care that we are here? And, you were talking about, I think it was an email or piece of research that you saw that showed exactly the cost when people walk away. And it is costing our companies in the United States hundreds of billions of dollars. So I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about what are some strategies, some things that we can really put our arms around that can help us retain our top talent and to stop churn.
Yes, I'm so passionate about this topic. And that piece of research that you're mentioning that we're talking about, it just quantifies the bottom line impact. There's lots of emotional, there's lots of story, there's lots of cultural impact of churn. There's also bottom line financial impact. The statistics now say that replacing someone can cost anywhere from half to like 2 times their salary. So if you have $100,000 employee and they leave, it can cost your organization anywhere from 50,000 to $200,000 of missed productivity, of brain drain, just of impact when that person leaves. So if we can figure out as organizations how to build places where people know that they're cared about, know that they're seen, know that they can advance and grow and develop and stay and be successful, not stay in the same job. Not everybody needs to stay in the same job all the time, but grow within an organization. I think it can be so powerful, again, culturally, but also on the bottom line.
Mhm. 100%. So well, I'm going to ask you a double sword question. What do you see or what do you feel is the biggest problem and why people are leaving? And then what is something that we can, that companies can start doing that, not just to keep them around, but keep them around as sustainable high performers?
Yes. I think a lot of research talks about people not leaving positions, but leaving their managers. And so that's something we can do something about. I don't think anybody goes to work and says, today I'm going to piss off someone on my team, or I'm going to break trust, or I'm going to treat somebody like garbage. I don't think that people think that way. So I think people basically are good, committed, strong individuals. And I also will say that middle managers have some of the hardest jobs in our organizations. As a middle manager, your job is to support the team that you lead to make them successful, while you're also supporting your manager and making them successful, while you're also doing some of the individual contributor stuff that you have brought along with you as you are moving into these new management positions. It's really hard. It is a really hard job. So I think when we say that saying people don't leave their jobs, they leave their managers, a lot of that ire, that anger goes towards those middle managers. And I will tell you, I think that is the first thing that we need to start thinking about and start fixing. How are we supporting our managers to make sure that they have the time and the tools and the resources that they need to be successful as themselves, to make their manager look good, and to support the team that they lead and make everybody on that team successful and look good. So as you're thinking about your middle managers, there's the airplane, put your mask on before you put the mask on others. I think a lot of our managers don't do that. They're not thinking about their own well-being. They're not spending enough time thinking about their development, thinking about how they're taking care of themselves, because they're so busy making sure they're taking care of everybody else around them.
Mhm.
So, instead of saying, well, people leave their managers, so our managers are terrible and we need to train them to be better managers. Maybe instead, what we need to be thinking about is how do we give our managers the tools that they need to make the connections with the people on their teams so that they can feel successful. So for example, if your organization does performance evaluations and it's a once a year thing, and the employee has to write up a 12-page thesis on why they deserve to keep their job, and then the manager has to review it, and and it's this very formal kind of tears involved situation, maybe think about, are there other ways that we could have supported coaching like conversations between managers and the individuals that are on their teams, where the individual gets to share with the manager the things that they've done and the successes they've had and the support that they need, and then the manager gets to share back the successes they've had and the successes they've seen, and what they as a manager need to be successful, and have these kind of two-way conversations. Do you have some organizations call them stay interviews? I find that term a little trite, but like, do you have experience conversations? Do you have a toolkit that allows your managers to say to their team members, I want to know more about you, and I want to know more about what you think success looks like, and I want to learn about you as a human being, and I want to start having these conversations so that you know that I do appreciate you and I do hear you, and even though maybe I can't give you more money, or I can't always win the battle, I can't always fight these battles as what but do know that I do have your back, and trust that I'm trying to do my very best for all of us, not just for me, but for all of us. Building those kind of tools into an organization culture, thinking about the way you do performance evaluations, what gets rewarded gets repeated, what gets measured gets done. Thinking about those kind of things, thinking about those behaviors, I think makes a huge impact as we're talking about building an environment where churn is lessened just because people are able to know each other as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that so much because it reminds me of something that I talk about a lot called strategic based empathy. Like
Mm,
just really understanding putting yourself in the other person's shoes. And I really like what you were saying about getting to know people on a human level, because a lot of times when people feel cared for from a high performance perspective, when they feel cared for, that's when it creates a sense of obligation and they're going to work really hard.
yeah. And some people will say things to me like, well, I'm an introvert. So, okay, first off, don't confuse shyness and introversion. Introvert extrovert really talks about how we get energy. It does not talk about being able to make friends with people. Or maybe you don't want to have a best friend at work. The old Gallup question. Maybe that feels weird to you. Like, I don't need a best friend at work. Okay, but you certainly don't need enemies at work, right? One of my friends and mentors and thought partners, Kat Vellos, talks about that. She says, okay, so you don't go to work to make friends, but do you go to work to make enemies? No. So you think about colleagueships maybe instead of friendships, right? And if people know the disc profiles, there's kind of the like more people focused side of disc, and there's the more numbers analytical side of disc. It truly, in my opinion, does not matter if you're a DC or an IS, or if you're an introvert extrovert. You absolutely can pay attention to the human condition and do exactly what you're saying, Sheryl. Build those places where people feel seen and heard and cared for.
Yeah. And so if you are a leader, or if you are a middle manager listening to this thinking like, gosh, I'm absolutely sandwiched in here, or you're leading a team of managers, what's one tip or tool or strategy that they can start doing today?
So I think something that all of us can do is, first off, hopefully you're having one-on-ones with the people on your team. And hopefully you're having those one-on-ones in kind of a standard cadence. Maybe it's every other week, maybe it's once a month, but have those one-on-ones. When I have one-on-ones with my team, I say to them, this is our time together. You come with your agenda, and you can provide it to me ahead of time or not, what feels best for you. And we will use this hour or as much of it as you need to make sure you have the support that you need to be successful. And I have about a dozen people that report to me, and every one of those one-on-ones looks different. So I think that's something that we can do. We can realize that we need to meet the individuals on our teams where they are, and start to, some people call it situational leadership, some people just call it managing through different lenses, managing with different hats. But, I think number one, make sure you're having one-on-ones, make sure they're in a standard cadence, make sure that there's an expectation set about who brings the agenda, who brings the questions, who is setting the agenda. I think that is something that every one of us can do. And in those one-on-ones, they might get a little tasky. It might be like, okay, this project, this dumpster fire, this fire.
Mhm.
Try to bring a little bit of humanness to those conversations as well. Maybe have a standard question that you ask the employee during the conversation saying, these tasks look great, really appreciate it. What's one thing that I can do for you this week that's going to help you feel more engaged, help you feel happier? My gosh, use the word happy. Help you feel more successful, if you don't like to use the word happy because it's too cuddly. But just have kind of a question. What's one thing that I can do? The first time you ask it, the person might have absolutely no answer. But if you continue to ask it in every one of your one-on-ones, eventually you're going to start building that trust. They're going to know that you actually mean it, and they'll come with answers. And when you do that, you need to lean back on courage, because they might ask you for something that you can't do. And so you have to think about, if they ask for something that I'm not able to provide to them, how do I say no? And here's what I could do. Or we really don't have the resources for that. We don't have the time for that. I'm not comfortable asking, being truthful. So having that courage to have those truthful kind of managerial courage conversations. So working on that while you're also thinking about how you're going to incorporate this new conversation piece into those one-on-ones that all of us should be having. Could be something that any one of us can do, regardless of where you are, very top of an organization, the whole way down to your frontline managers.
Yeah, I love that so much, because I think when you incorporate even one question, it really communicates very explicitly that I care.
Yeah.
I care about you. Rather than, I think about the difference between just having a one-on-one and going over what's expected, or numbers or metrics, or where somebody's been kind of underperforming, or where they need to rise up to do, without asking, like, what are some roadblocks?
Yeah.
Or how are you doing? Maybe, even like you're saying, two questions, like, how are you doing? Like, as a human being, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Because one thing that I've also seen is that sometimes if you take a high performer, and sometimes maybe they're not performing as high, there might be something going on that if you ask those very questions that you were talking about, they can get some support and rise back up again.
Yeah. When we think about wellness, I think you're exactly right. Sometimes we think about physical wellness. So we think about exercise. There are a lot of dimensions of wellness. There's spiritual wellness, there's financial wellness, there's, brain, mind. So wellness is huge. So if somebody is underperforming, maybe something is going on. Maybe there's something going on at home. Maybe there's something going on in the organization. Maybe they don't have the tools that they need. Maybe they don't have the support. So many things. And if we just start assuming we know the answer, we're probably wrong.
Yeah, and it reminds me of an example. So I have a client who's a managing partner at a consulting firm, and they had kind of crunch time, for a couple weeks, where people were really expected, to stay late and finish, but there were a couple people that were not, and they got a poor performance review. And what happened was, when they did go back and ask them, because they were very bright and they've always done really well, they just said that they were hungry. And when they were asked, like, what did they need? They're like, well, if you could just have like pizzas delivered, we're glad to stay here till 8 if we need
Right.
to. And it was just, so sometimes it is a bigger thing, but sometimes when you just like you were saying, connect with people and say, usually you're performing here, this is
Mhm.
happening. How are you, and how can I help? So I love that so much. So for everyone listening, whether you are a manager or whether you are a leader who are leading managers, what is your call to action, or what do you want everybody to do or remember?
You know, uh, as I think about fearless female leaders, and all the things we've talked about today, I want to go back to that concept maybe of confidence and courage. I love quotes. And so Sally Fields once said, "It took me a long time not to judge myself through someone else's eyes." And the fabulous Tyra Banks also once said, "Never dull your shine for somebody else." I love those. And I think about, as we're talking about this, we must have perseverance. We must have confidence in ourselves, and we must support each other at all costs. And because there is something out there to believe in that is bigger, that is more, that is stronger than what we can do individually. And I think if we can work together and do whatever it takes to achieve that, we're going to be successful. So I think that call to action for me would be for to have folks take a true look at their professional network. Take a look at who you surround yourself with. Are you surrounding yourself with people that want to dull your shine? Are you surrounding yourself with people who are judging you through their eyes and not for maybe the best of you? If you are, it might be time to break up with those people.
Mhm.
You know, you can break up with colleagues and friends. You obviously, if they're a colleague, you need to continue to be respectful and make sure that you're, you know, working with them in a way that is moving things forward. But I think, you know, taking a real hard look at who we are surrounding ourselves with and making sure, particularly in the world that we live in right now, that we are surrounding ourselves with a diversity of voices. And when I say diversity of voices, I don't just mean, you know, diversity as the color of my skin, but I think about your lived experience, your economic situations. Talk to people who are different than you. Talk to people who have a different life experience than you do. And when you talk to them, really ask questions to learn. Don't ask questions just so you can answer. Don't ask questions so that you have defensive fodder so you can, you know, ask curious questions to truly learn about their lived experience.
Yeah,
I think those are so powerful.
I love that so much. You're just preaching to the choir about courage and confidence and also caring.
Mhm.
And so it sounds like our homework is to really go back and think about who we are spending the most time with, who we need to possibly bring in closer, who we potentially might distance a little bit, and to really express that we care.
Absolutely. I think gratitude and awe are some very powerful concepts that we study when we're thinking about happiness at work, which of course impacts churn. Thinking about gratitude and just saying to somebody, "You did something for me and it mattered." Again, 30 years ago, Jessica Dieters, if you're out there, you did something for me and it mattered. Just saying those things make you feel better. They make the person feel better. And in addition to looking at who we're surrounding ourselves with, maybe try something new. So if you take a look, if you start diagnosing your professional network, I love a way that I like to do that is I put down my top 10 contacts. Like, who are the 10 people that I really count on? Who introduced me to those people, or where did I meet them? If you do that diagnosis of your network and you notice that all 10 of the people that you count on the most, you met doing one shared activity. So maybe you met them in a running club, or you met them at work, or you met them through one person. So maybe, Sheryl, you introduced me to all 10 of the people that are most important to me. That's great. And it might be an indicator that you need to expand a little bit. Again, just to bring that diversity of lived experience into your psyche and into your conversations so you don't fall victim to those group think things that none of us think that we're doing, but we get in this kind of mono mind. And but you know, so take a look at who's in your network and maybe try one thing that's new. Maybe go to a place that you don't normally go to, strike up a conversation with someone who you wouldn't typically strike up a conversation with. See if you can just broaden yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I love that so much. Or maybe take a class or um, go to a restaurant in a different town, or I don't know. I guess it can be something simple or, something more involved. So there is our homework to try something new, to immerse ourselves with some new people and to broaden our minds and to really express that we care. And I think that is definitely part of the piece of the puzzle to halting churn. Angela Stopper, really congratulations on everything that you've done at the University of California. I look forward to your following your journey and your continued success. And I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom today.
Oh, thank you for bringing our community together with this forum, that you bring us together in these spaces where we can share vulnerably and truly and help support each other. Sheryl, what you do is so powerful and so impactful by giving voice to all of these stories. Thank you for bringing us together and allowing us to have this time where we can share and learn from each other.
Yeah, well, you are too kind. I appreciate all of your words and again, all of your amazing wisdom. And I look forward to following your journey and hopefully connecting the next time I'm in the Bay Area.
Me as well.